Good morning, Harold Newbill, McClatchy Insurance Agency, and I'm meeting today with Steve from CARSTAR Capitol Collision, and we're going to talk a little bit today about auto insurance in California and why the costs have gone up from the standpoint of an owner of a body shop who sees cars getting fixed every day. Thanks for meeting with me today, Steve.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, your shop, and what you're seeing in the market right now.
Yeah, well, first, I guess about myself, Steve Morrow. I've been in the business 26 years, started when I was 18, shortly after high school, and was brought up all the way through the trade, learning how to do restorations, metal work, body work, painting, framework, things like that. We've owned the business for 20 years, and I've definitely seen a lot of changes in the industry from 26 years ago.
I'm sure you have. So maybe we start first with what are you seeing in changes in costs for body repair?
There's been a lot of changes, especially in the last 4 years since COVID. The biggest being is wages needing to increase because of inflation that we've experienced and we're continuing to experience. So that's caused an increase in the rates that we've had to charge. Dealing with insurance companies, obviously there's a lag in getting those rates to increase with our insurance carriers and partners to come up with the times. And so obviously profitability becomes less during those transition periods as staff requires more income. Additionally, the parts have increased significantly. There was a lot of part shortages during COVID, and there still continues to be shortages where manufacturers aren't able to produce all of the parts for cars the way that they were. So supply and demand obviously makes them cost more. And then they have the same scenario that we have with their staff, their energy, their material cost to produce a part have increased. And so obviously the part itself costs more just because of that. So parts have increased significantly. Labor has increased significantly. Paint alone has increased probably 30% over the last 5 years. And there's materials that go into making toners for paint that they experience the same thing. They have labor and material cost increases, which the final product is at a higher cost.
So insurance companies definitely see that when they're seeing, because they track every car that they fix. They say, okay, well, it cost me 5 years ago, $5,000 to do this repair. Now it's $9,000 to do the same repair.
Sure.
So of course, they also are going to want to increase their rates in order to kind of keep up with that.
Right.
Are you seeing cars more expensive to fix than they were 5 or 10 years ago?
Absolutely. From 5 years ago, the average repair, and we have Teslas blended in here, higher end vehicles, and then your just average daily driver, a Toyota Tacoma or a Corolla, the average repair used to be around $3,500 to $4,000 5 years ago, and we're seeing $6,000 and $7,000 average repairs on vehicles now. And so the cost has easily gone up 40 to 50% over the last 5 years to repair a car.
I can imagine. How does that kind of factor in the time to repair? Because are cars more complex than they used to be, so they take more time?
Yeah, that's another variable that was added maybe 10 years ago when we started seeing vehicles with ADAS features. It's autonomous driving features like, lane departure warnings and adaptive cruise control, things like that, where we're using sonars and cameras on cars to make them safer for drivers. And so those features that are in cars have added calibrations to repairs that we never saw before. Those calibrations, sometimes they're as small as $300 or $400 to do per car, but we see them regularly where it's $2,500 to calibrate a Subaru Outback, as an example, just for getting rear-ended. You have to calibrate all the cameras and sonars to see what they're intended to see and ensure that that vehicle travels down the road and acts the way that the manufacturer intended for it to act once you're done with that repair.
Well, I can imagine. What about like airbags and a lot of safety equipment? If you get an accident, like a side accident, that's going to deploy probably the front airbag, your side curtains. Does that factor into the cost to repair and maybe even get cars totaled that might not have been 5 or 10 years ago?
Yeah, so if an airbag blows, it doesn't necessarily mean that the vehicle is going to be totaled. I mean, insurance companies are totaling vehicles based on its fair market value, a percentage of its fair market value. And so obviously it increases the price to repair the vehicle when airbags do go off. But the cost is increased with those items as well, just like every other part on a car. They just cost more to purchase, and the labor costs more to install them. And manufacturers have also become much better over the last 5 or 10 years with putting out procedures. So essentially they've created an instruction manual of exactly how to repair this particular vehicle, this year, make, model, from down to the production date. It's very specific how to repair that car. And when you follow those procedures on how to repair that part or repair that car properly, it adds labor to the job. And so it could involve seatbelt inspections. There's nothing wrong with the seatbelt. They were in a minor fender bender, but Subaru says that when a vehicle is involved in an accident, that you must inspect the steering column for damage and you must inspect the seatbelts. And so it takes time to do those inspections, which obviously equates to a monetary value, making the repair, increase.
I bet that's a lot of training for your staff in order to be qualified to do a lot of these repairs that didn't exist 10 years ago. Is that what you see as well?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of training, and we do more training now than we've ever done before. ICAR is the industry standard for collision repair shops to train technicians on procedures and how to address seat belts and all of the equipment on a vehicle. And so we have an unlimited subscription that we subscribe to, where any of our technicians and our admin staff can log in and they can take every class that's available as long as they want to do it. But they do have a minimum requirement that each year that we require them to have their courses fulfilled to ensure that they're up to date on the latest training that's available.
That makes sense. That's a lot of CE requirements. Does every shop follow those requirements?
No, I would say that any reputable shop that's been around for a long time and that works with major insurance companies are required to do it by the insurance companies, and they should be required by the owners of the shops. But no, not every shop does that. A lot of your mom and pop shops don't do any of that training. And it's owners, that are working on the cars and they just kind of go about their way and they repair cars, but are they repaired properly? Because there's so many variables in how you have to repair that car. If you don't have the training and the resources to investigate the procedures to repair that car, you may not have a properly repaired vehicle. And at the end of the day, our goal, or any reputable shop, their goal should be to safely and properly repair that vehicle, returning it to its pre-accident condition so it ensures it acts the way the manufacturer intended for it to act, should it be in an accident again.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about when you're in a car accident as a consumer. Insurance companies oftentimes will tell you we have preferred shops and not. But the consumer actually has the right to go to any shop they choose to. What are some things, not even including your own shop, would you advise someone to make sure they do when they're selecting a shop to fix their car?
Well, the first thing that you should probably do is if your insurance company is recommending you go to a shop, if it's a higher end insurance company versus a low end insurance company, the higher end insurance companies are only going to direct you to shops that are qualified. I mentioned that ICAR is a training requirement by those insurance carriers, and that helps ensure that the shop is knowledgeable to repair your vehicle properly. If you take it to a shop that is smaller, they just may not have that sort of training.
You kind of mentioned that they should select a shop that's ICAR qualified, that's experienced. For example, with like Tesla's in the background, Tesla has standards they want met to repair their vehicles, or they don't want you repairing the vehicles.
Right.
But there's other companies, I'm sure, Mercedes-Benz, a lot of your high-end cars, they have standards they want met. They're going to tell you where they want to go to fix to the standards that manufacturer would want. Other than Tesla, are there some other brands you see that are like that?
Yeah, there's almost every manufacturer has a certification program, and we participate in those obviously with Tesla, but we participate with the Chrysler program, Nissan, Hyundai, Kia. Those are just some examples of the OEM certifications that we carry. And those manufacturers also have, in addition to the ICAR training, their own training on how to use their procedure pages. And so choosing a certified shop for your manufactured vehicle is becoming increasingly important, more than ever.
So that's a question they should ask is, are you certified to repair my type of vehicle? If I have a Mercedes, or I have a Lexus, or if I have a Toyota, or whatever I have, is this a certified shop for this? Tell me a little bit about that, because I want my car fixed right. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if you're ICAR certified and you have an OEM certification and you're a reputable shop, the last place that you would look to know that you're choosing a good shop would be the third-party validation, being Google reviews. How are previous customers speaking about the customer service that you offered and the quality of repair, things of that sort.
I think one misconception is that only shops that insurance companies recommend have warranties, but doesn't every reputable shop like yours, for example, or ones like you, wouldn't they warranty their work?
Yeah, most shops do warranty their work. If it's a reputable, larger shop, then they're going to have a lifetime guarantee on their work. Additionally, when you're working with an insurance company that recommended you there, that insurance company also has a lifetime warranty on your repair. So should you move to some other part of the country or a different state, that insurance company will ensure that you can take your vehicle and have it inspected, and any mistakes that may have been made, that another shop will correct it and they'll make it right. The good thing about us, in addition to those things, is being part of the CARSTAR driven brands. There's about 800 CARSTAR stores across the country. And so our lifetime warranty is
transferable to anywhere. So
Yeah.
I moved to Colorado, a
That's right.
CARSTAR shop, for example, could fix it.
That's right.
Let's shift gears a little bit to classic cars. We've talked a lot about modern cars and their repair, but I work with people who have classics, and there's a couple of companies that specifically work in classic cars. Those are also difficult to fix because the parts are scarce and available. Tell me a little bit about your experience in working with them and what you would recommend a classic car owner, let's say of a 70 Bronco or a 62 Porsche 356.
Right.
Where should they go if their car's been damaged?
Yeah, so classic cars are very different than modern cars in such a way that there is no procedures or rule book from the manufacturer of how to properly repair that vehicle. Those classic vehicles are typically, they're just a technician who knows how to repair metal will be able to repair the metal on there. Now, how good do they do it? That's where you have to do your research and find a classic repair or restoration shop that's going to make those repairs properly to the caliber of classic vehicle that you have. Now, if you've got a stock, maybe a one-time painted 66 Ford Bronco, anyone can really repair that as long as the paint matches and looks correct to what paint is on that vehicle. But if you're driving a classic Porsche or a Ferrari or something, then you want someone who really specializes in that particular vehicle and knows the ins and outs of exactly how to get it back to how it was prior to the damage that you experienced.
Some cars have a lot of aluminum and other stuff like that in them. Do all shops do those types of vehicles? Like, I think I read somewhere that Audis are kind of different, and to save weight and get better gas mileage, they use lightweight materials to build the cars. Is aluminum different than steel?
Yeah, it's absolutely different. The memory that's in aluminum is completely opposite of steel. Steel can be shrunk and stretched easily, where aluminum tends to have memory. So once it's bent, it wants to stay bent, and you have to have knowledge working on aluminum vehicles to understand if that metal is fatigued and if it can be repaired without being cracked. Oftentimes aluminum will crack when you straighten it out. And so most manufacturers on newer vehicles using aluminum will say no repairs are allowed at all, especially if it's a structural part. You're not going to repair it. It's cut it off of the car. Some of them are bolted on or they're bonded with structural adhesives, things like that, rivets, hold them together. And so they'll say no repairs. But once again, you're referring to the repair procedures of that specific car to understand before you start making repairs that you're going to repair it properly.
But not all shops do aluminum vehicles. So your mom and pop might not have the right tools or shop setup either.
They almost always don't have the correct tools to repair aluminum. And you have to have welding certifications to weld aluminum, especially when it comes to structural. So mom and pops generally don't have the equipment or the experience or the training to handle aluminum vehicles, where shops like ours have all the equipment and we invest in our technicians and training, and we have bi-yearly welding certification tests, and they have to spend a day in front of an instructor and demonstrate that they can properly bond the aluminum or the steel, whatever metal we're working with, back together properly, ensuring that that translates to the vehicle itself.
Being safe back on the road. Okay, well, I thought I had one more question, which I do, is is, are all insurance companies created equal? Without mentioning a company's name, there's a lot of people who are obviously trying to save money on car insurance because car insurance costs have gone up so much in the last couple of years. But cheap doesn't always necessarily equate to good, and overly expensive does not always equate to good. What are some things that you see in the market that you could give tips on without naming a particular company that you've seen, like, you want a company that'll do this, or I've found this? What have you learned?
Insurance is interesting because it has no value to a person when they're paying their premium until they actually need to go and use it.
Kind of meets you.
And so, like, as far as purchasing a policy that works well for you, you have to decide if your vehicle or the type of repair that you want is of a standard that warrants buying better insurance. Specifically, like OEM endorsements on a policy will ensure that your vehicle will only have new factory parts put on that vehicle, where you use a cheaper insurance company and they'll exclusively say that they're using used or aftermarket parts on your repair, and you don't have a choice. That's the policy that you signed up for. Better, higher end, bigger insurance companies, without naming any, like bigger, long-time quality insurance companies with OEM endorsements, generally will lead to
better repairs.
Your insurance having the means, because of the way your policy is written, to have your vehicle repaired properly without compromising any aspect of that vehicle.
So kind of what you're saying is kind of think of the outcome you'd want. So somebody who buys a 5-year-old Honda Accord to use for Uber might not care about OEM parts. They just want the car back on the road. A contractor's work truck, they just want the truck back on the road. They don't care if it's Ford parts or if it's an aftermarket. But somebody who buys, let's say, a Porsche or a BMW M3 Competition, they're going to want OEM parts on their car. So they should be looking at saying, I should be willing to pay more for my insurance to get the outcome I want in the claim, rather than get the cheapest, and then at claim time, if they have it, finding out, unfortunately, you're going to have to pay out of pocket if you want the difference between the aftermarket part versus the OEM part for that car.
That's right.
Okay. Well, I want to wrap up here and thank you for your time. You've been really informative about body shops and what consumers need for their insurance, as well as why it's so expensive and why it's gone up. We appreciate your help. Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.
And thank you for joining us today. And we'll have some more talks in the future.